Okay, I think that we can start. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for taking off your Friday to join us in this session. Welcome to the North Florida TPO learning session. My name is Elizabeth de Jesus. I am the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator for the TPO. The subject of our presentation today is the Office of Greenways and Trails, specifically the Florida Greenways and Trails Master Plan Update. And
it's the Jimmy Buffett one?
And the Sun-Trail Multi-Use Trail Priorities. Our speakers are representatives from the Office of Greenways and Trails and the Florida Department of Transportation. Our audience is mainly county and city staff, planners, engineers, our region, and as well as consultants. Our goal is to provide county and city staff valuable information that may be helpful in their decision-making process when it comes to the prioritization of multi-use trails within their jurisdiction. First, I would like to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, this meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, I guess.
Also, I would like to ask that everybody mute their devices. And finally, we will allow 5 to 10 minutes of questions and answers after each speaker ends their presentation. At the end of all presentations, we will open the floor for more questions. If you would like to ask a question at that time, just use the raise hand feature and you will be called to unmute and ask your question. Okay, so our first speaker is Clark Letter. He's the Director of Planning and Analytics for the North Florida TPO. Clark.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So thank you everyone for joining. I've been learning a lot of useful information talking with our partners at Office of Greenways and Trails and FDOT in terms of how their processes work. And it's not as simple as I would have thought. So I think a training session like this is very beneficial to help all of our county partners understand the processes of, once a project gets on our list, the additional steps that need to be taken for it to receive funding. So I would very much like this to be an open Q&A session. So I have relatively few slides here. And if you have questions at any time, please chime in by either raising your hand or just unmuting and interrupting. I don't mind. So with that, I just have a few points to go over. So as all of our partners know, every year we solicit input for our list of priority projects. So these encompass our region-wide priorities, as well as transportation alternatives program projects, which include multi-use trails, school safety sidewalks, which is very analogous to the Safe Routes to Schools program. We kind of follow the same criteria for that. We don't even prioritize, but we allow each county to submit one Sun-Trail project to include on our list of priorities. And I think especially focused on the bike and pedestrian focused projects, I think we encourage our partners to not only apply through these routes, but you have the option to also submit a trail or a pedestrian focused project into our region-wide priority list. So if you have a project that you're especially enthusiastic about or want to get pushed, you also have the option of submitting to the region-wide priorities as well. So it just depends what your motivation is on those projects. So today I'm just going to go over kind of our process and how we do that. And I think all of our county partners are familiar with the process that we use, and all of these requests are typically approved by your county commission. So your priority list goes to the county commission for approval, and then we include in our list of priorities that we submit to DOT for funding. And so I'm just going to go through. So this was our Sun-Trails priorities list that we submitted this year. And a key note to make is that in order for your Sun-Trail project to be included in the list, it first must be included in the Office of Greenways and Trails priority network. And so that process, which I'm hoping we can get some more detailed information on today from our partners at DOT, but that master plan is updated every 4 or 5 years. I'm not exactly sure, but it's not every year. So it's every 4 or 5 years that that plan is updated. And that's when they solicit new projects to be added to that priority network. And so if you want your trail project to receive SunTrails funding, it first must make its way onto this priority network list. And so there is an online tool for submission. And I believe the deadline for this year, because this is an update year, is May 31st. I guess someone from Office of Greenways and Trails, if that date is incorrect, please let me know so I don't provide misinformation here. But obviously, the sooner you get that project in, the better. So for these projects that are on our priority list this year, they will already need to be on that priority network. But if you're considering a project for the future, make sure you get it in as soon as possible. And you will also need segment by segment cost estimates. And then there is a process for designating your trail, which there's a link there to provide more information on. And I'll send out this PowerPoint after this meeting, so you will have these links for you to browse. And hopefully, maybe Allison, you could give some more information on kind of what the benefit is of designating your trail. But that is not a prerequisite to receive SunTrails funding. And if you look at our list of priorities that we submitted this year, we have the St. Johns River to Sea Loop, which is a state-funded trail project, and then all of our county submissions. And then moving on to our transportation alternatives program. Again, we have 2 categories for our TAP projects. One is focused on multi-use trails, and the other is focused on school sidewalks. And so each year when one of these projects is funded through the TAP process, the county will then rotate to the bottom of the list, and the next in line will bump up to receive the funding. It's as simple as that. So these projects, once they make it on our list, they have to be submitted through the GAP system, which is the grant application program, I believe. And there is detailed information on those steps that must be completed. And I know David Tyler is on the call, and hopefully he can provide some more information on exactly what goes into that process. And I believe the deadline for this year was February, early February. So the deadline has passed. And so one question I would have for DOT is, I guess, when we submit our projects to DOT, would we be submitting them for the next February to then apply those through the GAP system, since our priorities are adopted in March? So I guess, David, if you have a comment on that now, if you could weigh in.
Yeah, so we're still going through the applications, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but I'm kind of new to the program as well in the process. So we'll have to work out the details of it. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, because it's a little bit of a staggered process in terms
Right.
of the deadlines on both of those. So.
But I think the way we do it is, and you're usually probably adding a 4th priority, and your number 1 priority is probably still there from years previous. So I think the ones that we end up funding for this cycle will be the ones higher up on the priority list that you're showing right now anyway. So
Yeah.
And this is Robin. I have some information on that too, more as a collective FDOT process for that. I'll cover that question.
That would be great, Robin. Thank you. But I believe at least all of our county partners, I have emailed at least this year's solicitation for the transportation alternatives program. And it included a solicitation letter requesting the applications, the actual application, a cost estimate spreadsheet that you can fill out to aid your submission. There is this Transportation Alternative Set Aside Program Guidance and Procedures document, which can kind of walk you through the steps. And there was a document to kind of go through the steps on working through the GAP system. And again, for your project, once it makes it onto the TPO's list, you will still have to apply through the GAP system to be eligible to receive those funds. And again, to be considered, it must have the completed application form, including the project sponsor certification, a map, and a cost estimate prepared by a PE. So I'm sure, I'm kind of new to the TPO, so some of this process is new to me. And so maybe for some of our county partners, this is old hat, but I think even if it is, I think a good refresher and the ability to ask questions here is going to be beneficial. And so that's really all I had on the TPO's process, which is, I feel like the TPO end of it is pretty straightforward. And so I'm going to pause now to see if we had any initial questions on kind of the TPO's side of things before we hand it off to Office of Greenways and DOT.
And if anybody have a question at this point, they can unmute and ask the question to Clark.
Looks like we have a couple comments here. Looks like Allison said May 31st, confirm that is the deadline.
Yeah.
And then just obviously the sooner you get in your submissions, the better. So thanks, David.
Anybody have any questions? Let's see if somebody has any questions. No.
So I'm not seeing any questions, so I guess we can move along to, who do we have next, Elizabeth?
The next, we have Alison Betty. I hope that I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Alison. Alison Betty is with the Office of Greenways and Trails. She is the Greenways and Trails Coordinator for the Central Region.
Yep, thanks, Elizabeth. I am going to share my screen. I don't use Zoom often, so give me a moment. All right, can you all see my presentation?
Not yet. Now it's coming. Now, yes, we got it.
Okay, perfect. So like Elizabeth said, my name is Allison Beatty. I'm the Regional Greenways and Trails Coordinator for the North Central region. All right, so here's a map of my region. I'm all of the yellow counties. So Nassau, Duval, Clay, and St. John's all right in my region. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a background overview about what the Office of Greenways and Trails was established to do, and then I'll get into more of our 5-year plan update and get into more of the details there. So the Office of Greenways and Trails was established with the Florida Greenways and Trails Act to conserve, develop, and use the natural resources of this state for healthful and recreational purposes. So we do have an advisory council. They advise our actions and trail related issues. They can help promote our intergovernmental cooperation and partnerships, and they recommend priorities for critical links in the system. So everything that we gather with our 5-year plan will go to the council. They will review all of the changes and submissions, and ultimately they have the final say in what gets adopted. So a little more about the Greenways and Trails system. There are more than 5,500 miles of existing and proposed priority land trails. And we have 4,000 miles of designated paddling trails. So while we're going through this update, land trails are important, but we're also updating our paddling trail network. And I think that can be important for the county partners to think about, especially in this area with the St. Johns River and the Atlantic. So a little more info on the types of trails that we have. We have the whole Florida Circumnavigational Saltwater Paddling Trail that goes all the way around the state. The Coast to Coast Trail, St. John's River to Sea Loop, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, etc. So here's a quick snapshot of some of the identified multi-use regional trails. Now, the green lines that are underlying those regional trails, that's our current priority network. So some of the priority network is not within a regional trail yet, or it hasn't been constructed. But here you can see like the St. John's River to Sea Loop, the East Coast Greenway, those sorts of trails. And then here's a quick snapshot of our paddling trails. All the blue lines are paddling trails that we have in the state. So if any of your counties have paddling trails that connect to the Florida Circumnavigational Trail, or you'd like to update it, please get with me and let me know about that, as well as the land trails. So to get into our 5-year update, as Clark said, it's called the 5-year plan, and we do update it every 5 years. So the first step for the counties that I would recommend is reviewing our 2018 priority maps and 2015 opportunity maps. So there you will be able to see our current opportunity network and our current priority network and compare your data to our data. So if your data is different than ours, then you need to notify us of change in alignment, opportunity corridors, etc. An example of a change would be if we have an opportunity corridor showing where a development is now, or maybe a part of a trail has been constructed and we don't know about it. Our goal is to hold all of the data for the state for trails across the entire state, which is why we really need the county's help, because we can't, there's only 3 coordinators. We can't possibly know all of what's going on in every county. So as Clark had mentioned, we do have a new mapping tool, which I will get into and I'll detail how to use that. But I would say, please also, if you do use this mapping tool to update, give us updates on your line work and your map data, please also email me and let me know that you did that, and give a, is there a question? Okay, and then give just a brief description of what the changes are that you're proposing, and why they're important changes to incorporate, because we do take all of this information from the county, cities and counties to our council, and they do review all of this information. So that first step that we have in this process is updating the maps. So once we have the maps updated, we close public comment, like Clark said, May 31st. That's when we are closing public comment on our maps. And then we will be updating our line work June, July, and August. So by the time August rolls around, you'll be able to download shapefiles of the draft priority and opportunity trails. So this will be our first draft of everything that we've collected from the public. And then we will have public meetings starting in September to gather comments on the 5-year plan and the draft maps. Once we have the public comments done, we will close that November 1st. So there's kind of 2 rounds, but really we need your data now by May 31st, and then we can all look at it together in this second public comment period. And then by December, the Florida Greenways and Trails Council will be meeting to vote on the final draft of the 5-year plan and the maps. So now I'm going to get a little more into the map data. So level 1, we have the vision for the land trail and paddling trail opportunity maps. And level 2 is the priority trail map. And that's really, really crucial. That's the spine of the statewide system identified from the opportunity maps. All of this information that you see on these next couple of slides is available through our mapping tool. And Clark had the link to that on the PowerPoint. So everything you're seeing on the right-hand side, all of this information is available through there. So the criteria for opportunity trails are that they cross county boundaries. Opportunities need to connect destinations. So it can be state parks, natural scenic qualities, diverse experiences, cultural, historical sites, and have some kind of documented support from a local and regional government. So for instance, if a trail is a priority for one city and the neighboring city does not support the trail, or it's not a priority for them, that wouldn't be a good fit for our opportunity network. It needs to be regionally, regionally supported and regionally recognized. It'd be great if it connects to other trails in the area. And the council typically, it doesn't say it here, but typically the council doesn't want to include spur trails that just lead to nowhere. Because really the whole purpose of our office is to establish a connected network of trails. So really lean into that connectivity and the public support. And then it also needs to support the Florida Ecological Greenways Network, and you can find that information through UF. The Center for Landscape Conservation has that data available, and I can share a link in the chat later with you all. So that's the criteria to get on the Opportunity Network. Now for the Priority Network, it has another layer. Like we said, there's a level 1 and a level 2. Priority trails are that level 2. So it's a more focused vision and they rank higher than opportunity corridors. So they support national, state, and regional trails, build on past trail investments. That's really important. Long distance trails or connections to long distance trails. So that map of those regional trails that I showed you all, that's really important to have connection to those. Again, that regional and community support, but the extra layer that's added here, commitment to trail management and maintenance. That's really the key, one of the key differences between opportunity and priority trails. Like I said, enhanced access to nature-based tourism and economic development, connections to things such as state parks, greenways, trails, supports the FEGN priorities, but this one has that other layer, protects public safety. So it's non-motorized, separated trails, separated from highways and roadways. And in order to receive Sun Trail funding, they must be on the priority network, the trails. So this is what our mapping tool looks like. So we have a background, which were the slides I just showed you. The background information is that first tab, how to use the app, second tab, land trails, paddling trails, and then timeline of process, which I've gone over. So at the top here, we have different buttons, home button, you can change the base map. The legend will show you what means what. I'm sure most of you are familiar with how to use GIS. If you're not, give me a call. And if you don't want to use this tool, that's fine as well. You can email me your trail data, but this is just a really great way to compare what you have with what our data is. So we also have regions, so you can zoom into just your region, Northeast, and you won't have to, see the whole map. And then this edit widget is really nice. You can add a new feature, so you can draw a trail onto the map if you don't necessarily have the shape files for it. So if you know of an existing trail or a trail corridor that you think is viable, you can put it in there that way, but just make sure it requires you to put your name and email so that we can reach out to you and get more clarification if we need to. And then you can drag and drop files into this as well. And like I said, if you do use this tool, it's a great and easy way for you to compare your data to ours, but please also make sure to email me, let me know that you've done that, and just give me some details about the different data that you've put in that differs from our data. So that is all our update. That is our 5-year plan. Clark had mentioned our designation program. This is separate. So the 5-year plan, the opportunity, the priority trails, that is all part of our 5-year plan update. Another program that we run out of the office is the designation program. So the designation program furthers the purposes and goals of the Florida Greenways and Trails system, inclusive and interconnected system of greenways and trails, voluntary partnership, etc. So those are the goals of the program. And what this designation program does is you can designate public or private lands that work towards connectivity of conservation lands, communities, parks, other recreational facilities, cultural sites, and historic sites. So if it's public land, going through this process offers you extra points on grants. If it is private land, going through this process offers indemnity. So this process, all of the forms can be found on our website. There's a sidecar and it says designations. If you click on that, you'll find all of this information. You have to have owner consent form, management forms, and commitments. And then this process will go through me. I'm in charge of this program, and then we'll present it to the council, and they will vote on whether to extend an agreement, a designation agreement, to whatever trail or area is being designated. So that is all I have. If anyone has questions, please fire away.
If you want to ask any questions, please unmute yourself at this moment. Let me see if there's any on the chat. No.
All right, well, I'll put those links in the chat and put my contact information in there as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Allison.
I had a quick question for Allison.
Mhm.
Beyond the criteria that you described between the opportunities and priorities network, is there, once you finalize the 5-year plan, there's no more change in those networks, is there, or can you modify at any point?
Typically, no. Typically the answer is no. If it's something that, if there are extenuating circumstances, we can always bring it to the council because they meet 3 to 4 times a year. But typically there is not much change throughout the process or throughout the timeline of the 5-year plan.
And are all the projects that are listed on the priority network, those are also listed in the opportunities network?
Yes, they kind of overlap. So I can share my screen again real quick. All right, can you all see?
That's something that is designated through the process. Like if you submit a project, do you submit it to both or just one or the other?
So for example, if let's say Columbia County over here, if they have some connecting trails that connect down to a regional corridor, what I would recommend that they do is email me what they've submitted, what their changes are, and why it's regionally important. And then we take that information to the council, and the council will make the decision of whether or not that's an opportunity or a priority.
But they do it during the master plan update, or they do it separately?
No, all of these all of these priority versus opportunity changes will be done in like up to December. That's when the council will decide where everything falls.
So I think that if there's any takeaway from your presentation for all the county and city staff, is that it's very important for them to do this exercise, with the mapping tool, and update the information in the system, because I know that there's a new trails and other things that they're trying to plan, but if it's not identified in the Office of Greenways and Trails mapping, then there's no opportunity, there's no chance to get Sun Trail. I mean, I understand not all of the trails will qualify for Sun Trail, but I think that at the minimum, they should identify in the mapping and see what happened after that, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Now is a really important time, and getting this data to us is really critical, like you said.
Okay, any questions?
And by the way, this is what the mapping tool looks like that I've shared.
Oh, okay, awesome. Fantastic. We will follow up with an email to all of our list of participants so that they have those links at their fingertips, and they can do, you know, the update their mapping in the mapping tool.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Robin Birdsong. I was saying before that she's our guru for Sun Trail. She's with the Florida Department of Transportation, and she's been working on Sun Trail since the beginning. So if you have any questions on Sun Trail, she's the person that you need to be asking about this information that you want. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I trust that everyone can hear and see my screen.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you, Ron.
Excellent. I am Robin Birdsong with the Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT. I'm in the Systems Implementation Office in Tallahassee. FDOT's primary statutory responsibility is to coordinate the planning and development of a safe, viable, and balanced transportation system serving all regions of the state, and to assure the compatibility of components, including multimodal facilities. We do administer the shared use non-motorized SunTrail program, which is state funded, and the transportation alternatives, which is federally funded. Let's see here. Doesn't want to advance. Believe it advanced. The development of multimodal transportation systems that fit within the context of a community's vision, land uses, and environmental settings requires successful partnerships of public, private, and local and nonprofit entities throughout the state. Establishing and maintaining partnerships are at the very foundation of the SunTrail program. But FDOT's involvement and commitment with trails long predates the program. We leverage our expertise with our stakeholders for a shared vision and purpose. Many of you are the experts and most familiar with your local and regional visions. SunTrail recognizes those visions. Allison explained DEP's role. So I'll start with an overview of the SunTrail program, which was established in 2015 by Section 339.81 Florida statute. Funding for the program is from an annual reallocation of new vehicle tag revenues deposited in the State Transportation Trust Fund for developing the statewide system of high priority strategic paved trail corridors for bicyclists and pedestrians in coordination with DEP. Today, the SunTrail network includes a combination of existing planned and conceptual multi-use trails. The Florida Greenways and Trail System Plan that Allison was talking about and the Priority Land Trail Network serves as the basis for the SunTrail network. Not all trails are within the Priority Network, and not all of the Priority Network is envisioned to be paved. The SunTrail Guidance Handbook, which is on our website, details our efforts for implementing the program. The guidance was developed with extensive stakeholder input and mirrors other FDOT programs and processes that Clark was talking about. To understand how SunTrail is shaping our future, it is important to understand DEP's role, which I can't even do it justice from what Allison shared, but they are also guided by Florida statute, chapter 260. They are within the Division of Rec and Parks and within DEP. And the plan does outline the vision for the state's greenways and trail system, both on land and water. They define the role of the system in advancing Florida's economy, tourism, public health, transportation choices, recreation, conservation, and quality of life. As she said, their overall process is ongoing, but the system plan's mapped network is updated on a 5-year cycle, and their update is underway. The council that advises them, they have upcoming public meetings in St. Petersburg, April 6th and 7th, and they will, among many other things, talk about the Greenways and Trail System Plan. With the vision and the guiding principles, stakeholders work on the common goals for connecting trails throughout the state. SunTrail is just one funding source for developing the statewide priority trail network. Here at FDOT, we use a 2-tier structure to implement SunTrail funding. Both tiers provide funding to segments that meet the required program eligibility criteria, and it's also desirable and strategic to protect prior investments. One tier focuses on individual trail segments in the network. The other tier funds projects within the top 2 regional systems that were identified by DEP's Florida Greenways and Trails Council. SunTrail funded projects are included in the FDOT's work program development cycle, which I will explain. That's what Clark alluded to, gets complicated. The evaluation, prioritization, and selection of projects, we talk about that throughout the SunTrail handbook. provides more information about our focus for closing gaps in the existing trail system, with the desire to increase the continuous length of the statewide network by programming the next ready phase of previous investments. And we do work to provide a safe transportation system. Our SunTrail investments must be strategic, effective, and efficient. The identification and prioritization of trails begins at the local level, and even with grassroots efforts. This vision and ultimately the purpose and need evolves with public input. Then local agencies identify potential suitable funding sources, which is not limited to the SunTrail program. For the SunTrail program, all projects must meet the eligibility criteria, which is within the SunTrail network, prioritized by the applicable jurisdiction. In areas of a TPO, it must be a TPO priority. As they indicated, typically before it becomes a TPO priority, it would be a county priority, inclusive of the municipalities. For areas outside of a TPO, the project must also be a priority of the county. We need a trail manager, a non-FDOT governmental entity formally committed to operate and maintain the project. And it must be consistent with your at the applicable comprehensive plans, transportation plans, long-term management plans. Just got to have that project concurrency and compliance. This slide shares a lot of our selection criteria. Project phases with the greatest strengths that are ready for program will advance more quickly. Selecting project phases to receive funding starts first at the district level. They review and prioritize funding of project phases. They look at protecting public investments. It's strategic to program the next eligible project phase and to maintain that work program stability. We always consider safety and critical issues. We look at project phasing, of course, money. We always have to think about the money and the project cost and whether we can afford it. The production schedule, closing gaps in connectivity and balancing statewide needs. We look to senior management and our executive office for guidance. And they also look at the production and construction of projects. As Clark mentioned, even the TA and other programs, you have to have the cost estimates, and that's something that SunTrail looks at as well. And we look to actively demonstrate stewardship of state resources. The funding sources is state funded, and it is distributed statewide. In compliance with section 339.135 Florida statute, FDOT maintains a 5-year adopted work program. It includes the tentative list of all financially feasible transportation project phases that will be funded and carried out during the next 5 years. Projects and phases are identified. Schedules are developed based on priorities in the allocation of funds. The Adopted Work Program, AWP, details and commits our funding sources for the included projects. It documents production and construction of projects and provides a clear direction on where, when, and how FDOT will build and fund projects. By statute, if it's not in the AWP, we cannot do the project. During the annual cycle, known as Development of the Tentative Work Program, TWP, projects in the outer years are considered for advancement or deferral. A new 5th year is added. The first year drops off as projects are completed. We conduct public hearings to give stakeholders an opportunity to learn about and comment on the draft. After incorporating public comment, the final draft is submitted to the TPOs and the county commissions. After incorporating their changes, the TWP is reviewed and ultimately receives authorization through the legislative process and subsequently the governor before final adoption by FDOT secretary in July. Upon adoption, it will include SunTrail funding through fiscal years 2027. Today, all of our past adopted work programs and the tentative, we have over 54 million programmed in FDOT District 2. The FDOT AWP includes SunTrail funds. Again, today it's programmed through 2026. And these are all on our website, the current one and the past one, as well as the tentative one. The first year of the adopted, we call that our current program year. It includes 41 unique project boundaries. Some projects have multiple phases of funding. It also, in addition to the current and past adopted work program map and table sets, we have an at-a-glance adopted table. They have common names, and so at FDOT, if it's long a state road, that's what we will indicate in our work program. It could be advantageous to do projects concurrently. So you might see SR 100, but you might know it as a different local trail name. So everything in our detailed maps and table sets come right from our financial management system. And so it has a lot of very, very specific guidance that's required by our work program instructions. And then we manually create the at-a-glance ones that have common names. And we made the commitment to DEP and the council that we would maintain that common name one that people might have more familiarity with. And all of these charts and graphs are toward the back of the detailed booklets. And this is, again, remember, this is just our current year through 2026, and it doesn't include the past adopted work programs. And we also show funding by phase. The developing the work program takes substantial input from many. The first year of the AWP authorizes FDOT to expend funds to complete the activities and projects. And the AWP provides clear direction on where, when, and how we will fund projects. By statute, if it's not in the adopted, we cannot do the project. And many of the actions and timelines shown on this schedule are set by statute. Our TWP was submitted to the Florida legislature, the Executive Office of the Governor, the Florida Transportation Commission, Department of Economic Opportunity for consideration during this current legislative session. In July, the tentative becomes the adopted after approval by the appropriations by the legislature, budget authorization by the governor, and signature of the secretary. This tentative plan receives authorization through the process. Upon adoption, it will include SunTrail funding through 2027. And I've said that a couple times, but I want to manage your expectations that your motivation for demonstrating why your trails are a priority and not a local trail, or that it's an opportunity, your main motivation shouldn't be centric to just looking at SunTrail funding, because we are fully, come July 1, we will be fully allocated through 2027. And our this is the at-a-glance look of what's included in the 5-year plan come July 1. Again, this is all on our website. We look at unlike some of our funding sources that I'll talk a little bit more about transportation alternatives that has percent allocations based on population. The SunTrail program is statewide, and so we try to look at a 5-year period instead of just the 1 year for trying to maintain equitable distribution while still programming coast to coast and St. Johns River, the C Loop, which I'll talk more about too. Again, this is from the tentative. This is what we look like in terms of funding through 2027. With the multiple phases, we do fund, SunTrail does fund from the initial feasibility planning study all the way through construction. Construction, of course, costs more, so it offers typically a larger slice of the pie, so to speak. So this map, the St. John's River, the Sea Loop, and the other maps that I'm going to show you that are all available on our website. This one illustrates an at-a-glance view of existing segments within the developing St. John's River, the Sea Loop, which is one of the funding tiers for SunTrail. As envisioned, the loop will be about 260 miles when complete. The existing trails are illustrated in green and include a photograph. The blue dot next to the photo indicates the trails that extend beyond the loop, because not every trail is part of the priority network. Many of them extend to other destinations and might be part of the local trail vision. This map is a detailed connecting the gaps map. From the website, everything that you see underlined in blue on the map is clickable, and you can link to much more project details. And it includes all of the funding sources. It's not just SunTrail. So like the US 17 and District 2, that's in Putnam County, that on the top left, toward the top left, that box, that project's underway. It's nearly complete, but that trail's being constructed as part of the roadway project. This is an example of the information that you can gather from clicking on those hyperlinks from the detailed connecting the gaps map. And you can, if FDOT is administering the project phase, it has all of our public information meetings. It's got our typical sections, and you can track it through time. This one, this example happens to be in FDOT District 5, which is just this one's goes the Putnam County line, but it's actually in Volusia County. For the projects that FDOT's not administering, like if they're from a local reimbursement grant, it goes to the details in our work program, so you can see the timelines associated with the funding phase. SunTrail did start in 2015, but we do have finished construction projects. And this is an example of one in your region along the St. John's River, the Sea Loop, the Palatka Lake Butler State Trail, and nearly 6.7 million from the it received nearly 6.7 million from the SunTrail program, and about 2 million from other funding sources to deliver this project within the network. Another project that SunTrail funded was the planning study or feasibility study for the St. John's River, the Sea Loop connection in St. John's County. It is about 20 miles. You might remember it. It was on Clark's table of the priorities on the slide that he shared. FDOT did not administer this project, but like I said, on the map, there's a hyperlink, and it will take you to the county's website where you can download this planning study and more information. Like the St. John's River, the Sea Loop, the Coast to Coast is a regional system of which we are committed to completing. As such, we have the at-a-glance map showing you existing sections in green with a photo. The yellow dot next to the photo indicates trails that extend beyond the coast to coast regional system. And then the dotted purple lines are in various phases of development. Oh, I have a map of the coast to coast regional system, like the St. John's River to the Sea Loop. It's on our website. It's very similar to the St. John's, where you can click on the project development phases. Not everything we do is within the St. John's River, the Sea Loop, or coast to coast. I also mentioned the individual tier. This is an example of a SunTrail funded individual trail segment in your region. It's the Timucuan Trail. This construction picture, as you can see, was taken earlier this week. Is well underway. When complete, it will connect Big Talbot and Little Talbot State Parks. And I have included the funding years as well as the amounts on this slide. For the next several slides, I thought you might be most interested on the phases that have already been constructed with SunTrail funding in your region or within District 2. And I've colored the information to reiterate our selection criteria and then how the project demonstrated it. This section of the Timucuan Trail in Duval County received over 3.1 million of SunTrail funding, and it opened in April of 2019. This one along Tower Road near Gainesville also opened in April of 2019. It was a little less expensive. It was just over 500. It was $536,000. This is a segment of the DEP managed state trail in Putnam County. It opened in 2018. It received nearly 5 million from the SunTrail program and over 1.1 million from other sources for the construction phase. Another funding source that may be of interest is the Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program. It's often known as TA. It provides federal funds for a variety of smaller scale transportation projects such as pedestrian and bicycle facilities, recreational trails, safe routes to schools, community improvements for historic preservation, vegetative management, and environmental mitigation related to stormwater and habitat connectivity. On November 15, 2021, the bipartisan infrastructure law bill was enacted as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs. It reauthorizes the TA program. The TA program is funded by contract authority from the federal government, and each FDOT district receives an apportionment of the TA funds to administer through a competitive process in compliance with the federal law. FDOT requires all district offices to assess the eligibility and feasibility of the project applications. Then each agency that reviews the TA applications, whether a TPO or FDOT, they utilize documented selection criteria to evaluate project applications. As of January 2022, from 2015 to 2027, the adopted work program includes more than 595 million statewide for TA. Of this total, over 195 million are program project phases for bike paths, trails, and pedestrian or wildlife overpasses and underpasses. A portion of the total TA funding, unless the governor opts out each fiscal year, there's a specific portion that's set aside for the recreational trails program. In Florida, DEP manages that program, and they operate completely as a separate program, and they have an annual grant cycle as well. Theirs is closes very, very soon, but it is currently an open cycle. It is highly competitive. They also require cost estimates and the detailed cross sections, just like our FDOT programs do, among other things. So the slide of the Transportation Alternatives Program guidance you saw in Clark's presentation, we developed it after passing of the Highway Funding Act, which was moving ahead for progress in the 21st century. Some people call that MAP 21. For consistency with fixing America's surface transportation, the FAST Act, it was updated. And it will be updated again for consistency with the new law, the bill. So we have our statewide guidance and procedures booklet. It's posted on the website. Then each district does administer their solicitation grant cycles. And so they also have district specific forms and criteria. And then TPOs might have additional specific forms and criteria. From 2013 to 2021, over 15 million was authorized through the TA program in the TPO's 4-county region of Clay, Duval, Nassau, and St. Johns County. The district's teams provide support to project sponsors as they develop the applications. They work with the planning partners, the TPOs and counties to assess project eligibility and feasibility. They work with planning partners to review, comment, and rank the applications. They enter into a cost reimbursement agreement with the sponsors to deliver the scheduled selected project phases. To apply for funding, FDOT uses the grant application process, the GAP system. It's not unique to TA or SunTrail. We use it for many of our grant programs. If you're not familiar with GAP, it is replacing LAPIT for long-term project management as well. This is the website information. If you don't have a username and password, you can request one. And then once you have your login credentials, then you can, this is what it looks like once you log in. And so you can see all of the things that you're eligible, your agency is eligible for. You can look at your existing applications within your agency. And then again, long-term, you would, it would do your contract management for your reimbursement funds. This is an example from our Safe Routes to Schools program. Once you log on, you can see this happens to be Charlotte Harbor, but you can see everything that they started and that they worked on. So if it happened to be City of Jacksonville and you have different sections within your city that look at different funding sources from the department, everything from the city would be there. We have, in addition to myself, there's at least one trail coordinator in each of our seven districts and the Turnpike Enterprise. They serve as the primary point of contact for the program. They will assist you with planning and evaluating projects, and this slide has their contact information. And the same with transportation alternatives. For you, Amy and David happen to be the primary for both programs. That is not true in every district. And Elizabeth, I'll give you these slides afterwards, but we encourage you to self-serve for receiving notifications and things that are of interest to you. It's never too early to gain familiarity with programs and funding sources. Recommend that you look at our FDOT local agency program. There's other funding sources that they administer. It's not necessarily trail related, but there are things that might benefit your community that would be of interest. Again, our 5-year work program is all posted on the website. The slides I showed you were SunTrail centric, and those were within the SunTrail website. Another thing I encourage you to do is get your local agency program LAP certification to administer projects. It does take a while to do that, but that will set you up for success if and when you apply for funding through our department. And now I'll turn it back to Elizabeth, or
Yes,
David will take questions.
thank you so much, Robin. I just wanted to say that Robin got together with Tyler David and Amy Robertson and discussed about this presentation. So the presentation that you just heard was representing all of the work that they are doing. So now if anybody has any specific questions for Robin or for David or Amy, now is the opportunity that you have. If you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask the question. I have a question. So based on what you discussed, that means that you said that Suntrail is fully allocated through 2027. That means that there's not gonna be any Suntrail solicitations anytime soon, right?
Well, we haven't announced another solicitation cycle. No, we haven't. And it's true of all of FDOT's funding sources. We always look to the future. We have the 5-year funding sources. And so Clark had asked about the timeline for funding the TA projects that came in most recently. Even with the TA program, we look to the future. And so transportation by nature, it often takes several years to deliver a project phase.
Yeah.
So we have that 5-year work program. The current year is our commitment. That's well underway. If there's ever any changes whatsoever to the current year, then there's very specific thresholds that it would be an amendment that would go through the legislative or governor approval, depending on the level of, then that second year should be very stable, as well as the third year. Sometimes there's fourth and fifth years that it limits or things we learn about it from, if we're like in a preliminary design and engineering phase, we might learn things here in that phase that could delay funding in an outer year. There were environmental conditions that we didn't anticipate, or if there were delays in obtaining title to properties or things like that. Those outer years sometimes do change, but typically that is our intent of what we're funding, when we're funding it, and where we're funding it. So absolutely, we're fully programmed through 2020. We're completely programmed out.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, at TPO, our board has voted to dedicate transportation alternative funding 100% to multi-use trails. And what we have is called for sidewalks that are in close proximity to schools. And so I understand some of the trail projects that we have from the counties and cities, they are exceed the amount that we receive for transportation alternatives program, right? But however, strategically for some of the projects, it's a good first step, because in that way they can have the engineering and planning that is needed to define the project and the cost of the project. But in reality, I mean, we have some that are like a lot of, we will need a lot of funding and
they're expensive. They're expensive. People that haven't been entrenched in it, I don't know that they fully understand how expensive they are.
And we've been talking with our consultants about that also encourage our counties and cities to bring to the table local funds to supplement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so what you mentioned about different funding sources, that's fantastic, because we cannot only depend on one or two. We have to look outside of what we have right now.
Absolutely, and the clearer the vision, the better you are, the better the entity is for success, because instead of scrambling to find a project to submit to squeeze their project into a program where it doesn't exactly fit, and it might not, well, if they have a clear vision, then they're just more closely set up for success in securing the different funds, and whether it's local or state, federal, and in some cases even private developers. Elizabeth, you may remember years ago, the Office of Greenways and Trails coordinated the developers forum there in St. Johns County near Ponte Vedra. And there was quite a bit of momentum in activity. And then Allison mentioned their designation program with the private lands designation, which is voluntary, but it doesn't it provides liability protection for that private landowner if they were to designate lands within the system.
Wow, that's awesome.
There's a lot of mutually beneficial aspects of these partnerships that really can connect the system.
Yeah, and enhance. Mhm. I have another question. If a project have additional funds, like for example, when I mentioned right now, local funds, will that help advance the project on Sun Trail as a priority, or additional funding will not help?
Absolutely. That is for Sun Trail funding. That is one of the selection criteria. Are there other funding sources being leveraged? Does it make sense right now, right today, to deliver this project phase? With the example that I gave in Gainesville, the one along Tower Road, the reason the construction phase costs less, $536,000 for that over a mile long project, is because it was delivered with a roadway construction project. So they were working, they had the roadway project didn't include the trail, but it was part of the vision on the priority network for connectivity. In addition to that, it demonstrated other things. There had been a safety assessment that it improved safety. It did connect to a school, it connect to some doctor's offices and some other things that made financial sense to fund that project in tandem with that roadway project to leverage the public monies.
That's awesome. I have more questions, but I would like to ask if anybody has any other questions. I don't want to stop anybody from asking questions. If you have a question right now, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Elizabeth, this is David Tyler with FDOT. I just wanted to add a little bit to what you guys are talking about. I know I met with you and with Clark and the TPO, and you guys have a really good understanding of what the program has done in the past, kind of how to leverage some of the application process. But we would love to meet too with some of the counties individually and talk about some of the trail networks in their areas and in different ways that we can help you guys develop these projects for these outer years, and talk about the projects we have ongoing as well. So we're, again, Amy and myself, we're new to this. So we're really looking to get out there, get our feet on the ground, and see some of these systems and meet with some of the individuals. We've gotten a lot of emails and phone calls, but I think we'd like to go out there and meet with some of the different county representatives and city representatives if and when they're available. So feel free to reach out to us to set that up.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you very much. And Amy, we met with David and Amy. We used to have a representative from DOT for so many years, Barney Bennett. And David and Amy are the new kids on the block. And we are very pleased to have them and work with them in the future on any planning of multi-use trails. I have another question. Is planning and engineering costs covered under Sun Trail funding? I cannot hear you, Robin.
I muted myself.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of those pre-construction phases, the St. John's River, the St. John's County feasibility planning study is a prime example that Sun Trail does and has funded very preliminary project phases.
Okay, awesome.
Which is part of the reason why we're protecting those public investments. It is strategic to program the next project phase from those previous investments, and that's another reason why our work program is solidly built.
Yes, I have another question. Don't go away. Can Sun Trail be used to fund a trail gap that is not separated from traffic?
I don't know if I understand you, but we have at DOT, we use the words on system, meaning it's on our land, DOT's land, or off system, meaning it's on somebody else's land. Now, somebody else's land could be through a park. It could be along a power line. It could be along a local road. We have design criteria for both of those situations.
Okay,
The FDOT's design manual provides
okay,
the requirements for separation of a trail constructed on system on our land. And the Florida Green Book has the design criteria for off system, somebody else's land. Everything has to be on the Sun Trail network. If it's on, if it's Sun Trail,
yeah.
but it's on system, FDOT land, off system if it's somebody else's land.
But it has to be separated.
Yeah, it's meant to be separated. There are very
Okay,
allowances within the state statute that if it's less than a half a mile within connecting to existing trails, then Sun Trail can fund Sun Trail money, which the money is a TLWR fund code for TPO. That funding code matters. Most people, it's just letters, but for you all, that matters. Yeah, Sun Trail could fund it. Generally, it's for trails. I mean, but
Okay.
there are allowances within the law of what we can do. And in fact, a section of a bridge in Volusia County for the St. Johns River, the C loop, does have other on-road improvements for that bridge section.
Okay.
It is less than 1/10 of a mile, and it is the St. Johns River, the C loop. It is part of a bigger project.
Okay.
But it is a facility on that existing motorized bridge.
Okay. Perfect. I think I have everything that I want to ask. I think that's all. Anybody has any other questions? Clark, do you have any additional questions for Robin or David or Amy? I think we're good then. So
if I can, sorry, this is Robert
Sure.
Bartow. I had a question. Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, I'm Robert Bartow. I am the Florida coordinator for the East Coast Greenway Alliance. So
hi.
I see a lot of familiar names on the call, but I wanted to introduce myself to those that I haven't had a chance to talk to yet. Clark and Elizabeth, I will be reaching out to you after the call, but I had a question for Robin and all the FDOT staff. And I know this very quickly starts to go above all of our heads, right? But given the success and the demand of the projects that have been thus far since Sun Trail was started, have you heard internally, or do you know if there's any plans from the legislature to increase the amount of funding allocated to the Sun Trail program? Because I know it's collected from a percentage, but it's a flat $25 million. And as far as I know now, there's no provisions to go over that.
I'm unaware of current legislation that's supporting additional funding for this program.
Okay, thanks. Well, that's something we're pushing. I mean, like I said, it's been a slam dunk. It seems like everywhere that I've seen the projects, and we're advocating for that. But I didn't know if there's anything already planned, or we kind of got to get that started from nothing.
And that response is specific to unaware of state legislation for Sun Trail. With that said, the bipartisan federal dollars, there is an increase for transportation alternatives. In addition to the increase, it also creates a new funding code for our TPO. And it will have allocations to smaller population areas. With the new funding code will be associated with smaller populations. It's still all very formula driven based on population, but there is new money coming in from the federal, as I understand it, from that federal authorization.
Oh, great. Well, that's good news. I definitely will follow up and try and find out some more about that. Thank you.
That would be Federal Highway has quite a bit of information on their website, as well as toolkits, as all the states are working to learn more about the nuances and the funding structures that are coming in as part of the bill.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Robert. Nice to meet you. So I think that we are at the end of our learning session. We will follow up with the email with all the information that Alison shared with us, the link so that you can go to their webpage and use their mapping tool and other information that she shared with us. Also, if I don't know, Robin, if you can share your presentation, your slides, and also Alison, if you can share your slides, and Clark, we can include those in the email as a follow-up for everybody. And so I think that this includes, yes?
I'll send them, and I'll add a slide since you had questions about the design criteria. I'll add one slide on that so you have that too.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate Robin and Alison and David and Amy participating on this session, and Clark. Thank you everybody for their
I had
presentation.
one, Elizabeth, I had one question, and I'm not expecting to get a direct answer on this, but in my short time being here and going through the transportation alternatives process, especially with our focus on the school safety sidewalks projects, it seems like a lot of the requests for these might come from the public school system, but they don't necessarily have the resources to put together the package to submit to through the GAP system. Maybe they can't get the proper estimate, or county staff is short-staffed and it's difficult to kind of align those resources. So I was just wondering if there is a method to maybe say they're interested in submitting their project, but they don't know if it's a good candidate, if there's utility conflicts or anything like that. Is there a method to maybe shortcut that and get them maybe a high-level answer of, yes, this is a potential candidate, or no, don't bother wasting your time on this one?
As a government agency, we're not really set up for shortcuts, like repetitive process. With that said, there's the state funding that does safe routes to schools, and that Sarita is a statewide coordinator. Every district has a district coordinator as well. Sarita, for the state dollars, she does offer workshops throughout the state. They're not in an open cycle right now. They've already closed. She won't announce I talked to her earlier. I talked to her yesterday to make sure I didn't miss anything for this. She will be announcing the next round of workshops in this after, during the summer. They'll be they typically in late summer, early fall. So that's the state funded safe routes to schools. The federal allocation, the TA money can also fund those sidewalks for the safe routes to schools. And all of the state process and procedure is to comply with federal guidance and federal requirements. So we are happy to, Amy and David, myself, we're happy to help them. If they plan to submit, it's never too early to start. If they don't have if it happens to be something like, if they don't have the title deeds, it's going to be hard to implement the project because they don't have site control. And for those federal monies, they have to have site control and long-term site control. They have to have that public interest. You want to, make sure that public money is going on somewhere the public's going to be able to use. And it could, if they don't have site control, there could be long-term problems where, I don't know, 15 years down the road, 15 years in the future, it could be problematic for them and repayment of those public expenditures to the program. It's called NEPA, is part of what's required for those federal funded projects. And you know, we can set up time to go more in depth on that, and we can bring our environmental management office into that conversation because they would be more versed. But it is for site control for that long-term compliance for those public expenditures.
Okay, I got you. Thank you. That
Mhm.
was helpful. It's,
Mhm.
you know, that they often ask, it seems like we get asked at the TPO, and then it's a more complicated process than just us giving us the nod of approval, so.
Yeah.
It is. And even with some of the small funded, there's a lot of different funding sources. I mean, Allison, they maintain grant resources. They have a quick list of other grant sources, some from private sources. Years ago, the Anheuser-Busch company there at Jacksonville wanted to give back to the community. They have a large work base, and they worked with the Conservation Fund to put in kiosks on the Jacksonville Baldwin Rail Trail. And so sometimes it's, you know, and kiosks are great. People like to see the maps and get the historic information, know what's in the area. Kiosks in of itself might not have scored as high in some of the other grant sources. And then you had a private business that says, wow, we have employees that we want to be healthy. Is there something in the community that's desirable that we could get back to? And they worked with the Conservation Fund to put those improvements in on that trail.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mhm.
So thank you very much to all the speakers and all the attendees, and we will follow up with an email with all the information so that you can explore more on this information. Thank you very much, and be safe and have a great weekend.